Welcome to Sge Podcast, which is an acronym for Save Green Earth and our names. Hi, we are your hosts, Sophie, Gergana, and Evita. Hi! In this series of podcasts, we are discussing important books for the fields of anthropology and ecology. Today's book is a groundbreaking ethnography written by Eduardo Kohn, professor of anthropology currently residing at McGill University, How Forests Think. So this book is an ethnography of the Avila people in Ecuador that attempts to portray anthropology beyond human entities. How Forests Think is a book that explores the ways in which non-human entities such as animals and forests perceive and understand the world. He argues that these entities are not just passive objects in the environment, but are active agents that have their own rights, that have their own ways of thinking and communicating, and he draws on the perspectives and practices of the Runa people of Ecuador to illustrate his point. He also shows how their understanding of the forest and its inhabitants is shaped by the interactions with them, and how they attribute agency and intentionality to forests and animals. I will discuss main concepts about the book. At the same time, I will not spoil anything for you guys. So first concept is ontology. It is the study of being or existence. He argues that understanding the ontology of non-human beings is essential to understanding the perspectives of trees and animals. And he also talks about semiotics a lot. Gergana will go further into this, and I'll just give you a brief definition of it. It's the study of signs and symbols. Non-human beings use their forms of semiotics to communicate with each other and with humans. Then there is the multi-species ethnography, which is a research method that involves studying the interactions between human and non-human beings. And at the same time, a very important topic is also perspectivism, and it's the idea that different beings have different perspectives of the world. And the book is very important, first of all, because it is in his interview that I will link for all of our listeners in case they want to check it out. Kohn said that how forests think is how the world should think. So that already gives you a very important perspective of it. And the book is itself important because it also challenges our conventional understanding of what it means to be human and what it means to be not human. He really argues that humans are not the only beings capable of thought, and that the non-human entities, like animals and forests, possess their own unique ways of perceiving and understanding the world around them. And by understanding them, we're able to also understand the world itself. And the book actually invites readers to reconsider their relationship with the natural world and to recognize the interconnectedness of all things. And it's also cool to mention that the book won the 2014 Gregory Bateson Award for Best Book in Anthropology. So what did you guys think of the book, and how do you think we can situate it in today's anthropological debate about ecology? Gergana?
Yes, Sophie, thank you for the wonderful introduction. I have to say, it is so refreshing to take this outlook of the world, to kind of see everything as communicating through images and be forced to see through these perspectives that allow you to notice all the many interactions we are surrounded by, truly. But yeah, I just wanted to say, when I was reading this book, the ecosystems approach popped up into my head. Just to quickly give a definition, Milton, in her article Ecologies, Anthropology, Culture, and the Environment, she describes this perspective as the one that views the total of living and non-living substances as bound together in material exchanges. She continues that human beings and other living and non-living things in their environment impact upon each other in a system of material exchanges. So basically, the core idea is that human beings have an impact on the environments and are themselves affected by environmental forces. This theoretical perspective was developed during a, so to say, revolution against causal explanation, where up to this point, the ruling perspective was more deterministic, and this approach offers this new adaptational outlook.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so of course this relates to the book because Eduardo speaks of the grand process of symbiosis that all living beings are part of. He views the world we are in as one of interactions and adaptation, as he speaks of the habits we create by familiar experiences. Or to further specify, he speaks of selfhood as the outcome of processes of habitual interaction with the world, and also with the generational play of remembering and forgetting what fits our environment, which is something present in all living organisms, plants and animals. It is important to note, though, that the ecosystems approach is still pretty dichotomous, as it separates nature versus culture, even though they are parts of the same integrated system, while Kohn works to eradicate the nature-culture dichotomy by showing the world from a unified perspective, working with semiosis. This leads me to also kind of mention quickly that the turn away from the nature-culture dichotomy more as a trend rather than a theoretical perspective definitely applies to the book. Kohn evaluates this thinking in twos as a product of the human symbolic thought and urges anthropology to refashion in a more holistic approach.
Thank you, Gurgana, for mentioning this dichotomy. I also wanted to touch upon this topic. What Kohn does is discuss about our type of semiosis, our symbolic semiosis or language, as being continuous and emerging from the semiosis of nature. He uses the example of a monkey seeing a tree falling. The monkey connects it to something else rather than just what it is. Danger. For her, the falling tree means something. It is an index, a sign. Our symbolic semiosis is continuous from the non-human understanding of indexes. We're entangled with non-human entities.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah, I was also thinking about the monkey. But when I was reading the book, I also thought of cognitive anthropology. Turkina, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Just to elaborate, cognitive anthropology was another route that developed during the same time as the ecosystems approach. And that is the cognitive anthropology or ethnoecology, you could also say. In this perspective, attention is paid to people's own perception and interpretation of the world. And just to kind of bring it back to the same article, Kate Milton states anthropologists within this field are interested in what generates human activities. So goals, motivations, assumptions, beliefs, and in the social and cultural consequences of action. The focus is on people's own conceptual model and the viewpoint of the people being studied rather than the analysts, with a key concern on the diversity of ways in which people perceive and interpret the world in their own terms. Just a quick example of this would be local indigenous environmental knowledge, or METIs. This approach applies to the book as Kohn advocates for paying attention to how other living beings experience their world. This is seen right at the beginning of the book when he gives the example of humans being told to sleep face up so that the jaguars can see them better or experience the human and therefore stay away. He discusses how paying attention to how other beings experience the world is truly the natural way to interact with the world, and something he experienced in the Amazon as the Runa people there were in tune with those signs. The people there avoid the monadic isolation, which he kind of calls soul blindness, by which they lose the ability to be aware of the other selves that inhabit the cosmos. So Kohn had to learn to pay attention in this sense by understanding the people's local knowledge and perspective on the surrounding environment.
I think this is a good example to connect it with the concept of soul blindness. Is his account of the Avila tale on how they took out the demons, but they left the one alive, who took the form of a little girl. One young man married her, but she ended up eating both of the children and him.
Oh my God, I don't know what your obsession with this story is.
No. But what Kohn concluded is that this guy was seeing the blood, and he was like, oh, I'm being eaten alive, with no subjective experience of pain, just a cause and effect chain. Kohn quotes, "This is a dystopian glimpse of the world where agency becomes divorced from a feeling, purposeful thinking, embodied and localized self." And he explains that this radical soul blindness, a world with no selves, just effects. This quote of story made me realize how modern science sees the natures not as having subjective experience, just as the man who had no suffering, but as a chain of causes and effects, exploring just the physical aspects and effects. Science, in a sense, is soul blind, having lost the ability to be aware and relate to other soul-possessing selves in this ecology of selves. So Kohn makes a sound argument here. His argument cannot be mistaken for an anthropology that derails from the human, though. What he argues for is an anthropology that is still about the human, but rather than studying them as only persons that inhabit the space and with resources, this anthropology beyond the human would study humans as being entangled with an ecology of selves and explore their immediate relations. Kohn recognizes personhood of other beings, and that makes me think of Takacs
2021, who discusses the recent decision of the New Zealand Parliament, actually, to give the Wanganui River and the Te Urewa Mantuan ecosystem rights as legal persons, and the Maori governing board is to speak and protect the rights of those non-human entities. This is an ongoing legal movement with more and more places gaining legal rights in Bolivia, in New Zealand, in Ecuador, in India, and several American communities. Kohn's view of the forest of selves consisting of persons that are non-human, taken by policymakers and laws, sees a villa forest or any part of nature basically as a person rather than a space with resources. Thus, by seeing places as persons, how anthropological research is conducted changes. For example, a new policy or project in a human society might be contested or guided by anthropologists who go to the places and engage in ethnographic research, examining their efficacy or make a case for what people actually need. If policy takes space as persons, then anthropology beyond the human could prove to be very useful, as it would study a region as an ecosystem that entails humans rather than human societies inhabiting this region themselves. As an anthropology beyond the human could recognize the whole ecosystem needs rather than just the human needs. But what I think we need to do is go further than this. As I mentioned before, the majority of scientific theories see the world in a soul-blind way, as a space where a chain of cause and effect takes place rather than be aware of other selves in the world. Even if Kohn argued for an anthropology beyond the human, and even if certain laws recognize the personhood of certain places and non-human entities, this will not prove to be enough if personhood of other entities is not central to our knowledge systems, and we see nature as resources or a space that we humans can exploit or inhabit. However, if all societies recognize the souls of our cosmos, I think moving forward to an environmentally sustainable future would be more plausible.
For sure. It is great to see anthropologists applying these new approaches that take into account the greater whole we are all within. We are not separated and we cannot be separated, so a study solely on humans is inadequate. So like I said, it is great to see these more holistic approaches becoming part of anthropology and seeing the continuous evolution within the field.
I absolutely agree. So just to recap, we have spoken about the book, How Forests Think, and discussed, without spoilers, some very important concepts, as well as mentioned two ecological theoretical perspectives that relate to the book, and mentioned current ontological changes that are happening right now, as well as expressed our hope towards more actions being taken for a unified, greener planet. For our listeners, you guys can find the book. It is available in audio, paper, or e-formats and was translated into at least 9 languages. Thank you, ladies, for such an amazing discussion on how forests think. Thank you. And thank you to all of our listeners for their time and attention. Please remember that saving Green Earth is enough to generate change. Bye, everybody. Bye.